has stepped in to help it bounce back. And oh yeah, there's that pesky little election.
A little bit of a tricky situation.
So we called in some brainy backup.
Don't panic.
And we asked, what should you be doing to protect your money? A bunch of would-be laws are stalled in Oregon because of the GOP walkout. But up in Washington, they're getting stuff done and standing up for victims of domestic violence. Also, there's a bunch of goo washing up in Washington.
Ow!
And later, this is awkward, but the city once dubbed the porn capital of the West Coast is no more. Portland's last adult theater just shut down. And yep, Dan is still gone. So you're stuck with me. I feel so bad about that part of it. Welcome to The Story Without Dan Haggerty, everyone. I'm Maggie Vespa. Obviously, I'm still here, but fear not, our slim-fitting, suit-loving namesake will be back tomorrow. And in the meantime, let's keep talking. Specifically, keep talking to us. We want you to. Tweet us, comment on Facebook, send us emails, use the hashtag HeyDan, even though he's nowhere to be found, or Hey Maggie if you want to. We want you to be a part of this show, and we're here to answer your questions. So once again, we're going to start tonight, speaking of, with something you have a lot of questions about, and that is coronavirus. So here's a quick look at what we know about the cases in our area. 10 people have died in Washington, and 29 others have tested positive for the virus. In Oregon, 3 people have tested positive. If you've watched our other newscasts, you've seen all this before, and you can, of course, get all that info at kgw.com. And we want you to know, before we report any cases, we are confirming all of this with the Oregon Health Authority or the Washington State Department of Health, depending on the location. And we're also getting updates from the CDC. And if we hear about anything that sounds suspicious, if you hear about it, if you read it on social media, send it to us. We'll verify whether it's true or not. We've been doing that this whole time, and we'll keep doing it. All right, but we want to get to our big story now, and that's how coronavirus is affecting other aspects of life, specifically your money. So first, due to corona panic, the markets were down. And then this week, the Feds slashed interest rates. So now the markets are back up, even more still, after Joe Biden's big wins on Super Tuesday. So from your mortgage to your student loans to investments you have or could make, what should you do? So for answers, we turned to someone who is smarter than I am. All right, so we're here with Chris Martin, VP of Advisory Services with Northwest Capital Management. Did I get your title right?
You got it.
A few times. Okay, cool. Yes. I came at you kind of with 3 categories. Okay. And the first one was kind of what, especially in this hot real estate market, could this mean for mortgages or people who want to buy? And you said, kind of, let me do you one better and do mortgages plus student debt, basically all your debt.
Yeah, I mean, this is a perfect environment to sort of get your financial house in order. Rates have come down pretty dramatically. The 10-year Treasury rate is the key market rate for mortgages. That's down under 1% for the first time ever. So what it does is it means that mortgage rates are sort of prime for folks to refinance. So even folks that bought a house maybe a year ago could refinance and lower their payments today.
And your student debt, same story? Same story,
yeah. Student debts, those are actually going to reset this spring. So, and they are, again, pegged to the 10-year, so you're going to have an impact there that should be beneficial for most folks that have student debt.
Category number 2 that we wanted to touch on was people in their sort of retirement years or close to it, and they're worried about their investments and what this means for them. So what would your message to them be?
Yeah, a little bit of a tricky situation. This is probably a time to, for sure, reevaluate their allocation. Don't panic, but take a new assessment of how they're currently allocated. Do they have too much exposure to stocks? For folks that are really approaching retirement, you're probably thinking you shouldn't have probably more than 50% of your portfolio exposed to stocks. Ultimately, they need to decide whether they want to maybe take a little bit of money off the table, use that to sort of be protective, maybe use that short-term bonds, short-term treasuries, CDs, money market type accounts, just until we get some clarity on the economic impact of the coronavirus.
And then for those who are younger and have decades to work, different message, I would assume.
Yeah, completely different message. Starts out the same, don't panic, and certainly review your allocation. Most individuals that we talk to in our business don't have enough exposure to equity assets or growth type assets. Remember, you're trying to create wealth. and you're not going to do it with bond-based or fixed income type assets. So in this environment, most individuals should probably have something 80 to 90% of their portfolio exposed to stocks. Now that's tough in an environment like this. Because
sounds so big.
Yeah, because it makes you really concerned, and you see these drops daily or whatever. And because you have so many years until retirement, you can actually take and handle that volatility, whereas folks that are really close to retirement just don't have the time.
Don't you guys love those cheesy stock photos? They're so intense. They're so natural. All right, seriously, big thanks to Chris Martin and to Northwest Capital Management. And they're not paying us to say that. They just helped us out with this story. We'll have more from our chat at kgw.com and on our YouTube page. And another big thing that coronavirus might screw up, frankly, is the Summer Olympics. It's still a ways out, but the International Olympic Committee is having meetings about what they're going to do. And right now, they are still planning, at this point, to hold the games in July. But if things get worse, there is good news for the TV world, because NBC, hello our network, has spent billions of dollars on broadcasting rights. But it turns out they are insured in case they have to postpone or cancel. Now, of course, we are really hoping the Olympics are canceled because, number one, they already made all these really cool graphics for us. Look at this. See? That can't go to waste. We can't waste that. Number two, we're sending Dan to the games this year. Number one, I want souvenirs tied to that one, and I also want to fill in. So anyway, we will keep you posted on the status of the Olympic Games. And by the way, in Italy, they're not canceling any sporting events over the outbreak, but they are banning fans from coming to the games. Look how creepy this photo is. And let me say that again. The players will still take the field, but in empty arenas. Sounds super fun. We're not going that far here in the U.S., but last night we told you about how the NBA has told players to stop high-fiving fans while coronavirus is going around. And C.J. McCollum tweeted this out, saying he's going to stop signing autographs for a while now. And obviously people are wary of touching, well, just about anything, especially each other. So what about when you meet someone new? Do you still shake their hand? What do you do? It's kind of weird. We asked someone who's an expert in our area, apparently, on handshaking. Here's what he said.
In some societies, they do a bow, and so we've seen that that's something that some people are picking up right now.
All right, so Catherine Cook, there she is. Look how graceful. She headed out on the streets of Portland to give bowing a try, and so sad she didn't have much luck, but she did find other creative ways to greet people.
Like, oh hey!
Oh hey, man.
That works.
That's what I thought.
I didn't catch it.
Only Keiko could pull that off. So if you're thinking this is too weird, I still want to shake hands with people, just remember to follow this old PSA from Washington.
We love soap so much we scrub for fun. We'll wash your hands in time.
Very nice. All right, so enough of the C word for tonight. And to be clear, that's coronavirus. We just want to make sure we keep a spotlight as well on another big story happening in Oregon, and that's what's going on in Salem, which is quite frankly nothing. Nothing's happening there. There's a lead-in for you. Seriously, literally nothing is going on because the GOP walkout is still happening, and Republican lawmakers left to block a vote on the greenhouse gas emissions bill, cap and trade. And for weeks now, we've been tracking the other bills drawn up in this short session that frankly are in danger of dying in the crossfire if this continues. Bills of all kinds. Ones about insulin affordability and programs in prison. So now, by contrast, let's turn to Washington, where frankly things are happening. And that includes progress on a bill that we've covered in the wake of a crime that shook us all.
She was given a no contact order. For 64 days in a row, he violated that.
So the Tiffany Hill bill passed unanimously in the House today with amendments. And after this, it goes back to the Senate to get those approved. It's expected to pass overall. So today was huge. The lawmaker behind this is from Vancouver. She was abused as a child, and she's tried for years to get this bill passed. But when Tiffany's story broke in November, this lawmaker knew it was beyond time. Hill, to recap, was murdered by her husband in front of her children in a school parking lot. That husband, who later shot and killed himself, had been violating a no-contact order left and right. He threatened Tiffany. He put a tracker on her car. But the laws weren't strong enough to protect Tiffany, flat out. So this bill would set up a system where a judge can order accused abusers to wear GPS monitors that are linked to an app on the victim's phone. When the abuser gets close enough to violate the no-contact order, an alarm would go off, letting the victim know they need to leave that space. The lawmaker behind this says it would have saved Tiffany because it would have given her a heads up that her husband was in that same parking lot. We've got much more on this story and the progress that is made when state lawmakers are actually there to vote at kgw.com.
We're done with Super Tuesday, so how is Washington's primary shaping up? And just how much money did Bloomberg spend in the Pacific Northwest? Also, someone just bought the URL artstax.org just to make fun of Portland's least popular revenue source. Ouch. All that when the story continues.
Welcome back. So if you have any questions so far about the show, please let us know. Use the hashtag HeyDan, or if you want to, Hey Maggie. And a lot of you might have questions actually about what we're going to talk about now, because Super Tuesday is over. So that means we're deep into primary season. And those of you in Washington, you'll be voting less than a week from today on March 10th. And we're calling it Mini Super Tuesday because 6 states are voting, and Washington is one of the big prizes. 89 delegates are at stake. Of the other states voting, only Michigan actually has more. Our neighbors in Idaho will also be voting, and they have 20 delegates. So what do polls for Washington look like so far? We'll check that out. According to 538, Bernie Sanders has been way ahead for a long time. And you might remember Sanders won Washington and Oregon in 2016. So he has a lot of support here. And these polls show Michael Bloomberg ahead of Joe Biden in Washington. But of course, he dropped out today and then he endorsed Biden. So that could really shift things. We'll obviously keep watching and keep you posted. So speaking of Bloomberg, he's out of the race, yes, but we want to show you just how much money he spent on TV ads in Washington and in Oregon, because he was buying ads here in the Portland market to try and reach voters in Southwest Washington. So let's break this all down. Bloomberg spent more than $3 million, million with an M, on 38 ads in Oregon. In Washington, he spent more than twice as much, almost $8 million on 44 ads. So far, the only other candidate to purchase ads in Oregon is Tom Steyer, who was also dropped out. In Washington, Sanders and Warren have also purchased ads. They each spent $170,000 on one ad apiece. So even though he's out of the race, it's clear Bloomberg has a lot of money to spend, and that money could now go to support Biden. And like we showed you, Washington has a lot of delegates. So we'll keep our eyes peeled to see if some Biden ads start running in our area over the next week. All right, so let's pivot now for a second to local politics. Last night, that was a lovely shot of me. We told you about a group running ads targeting Oregon Republicans who have walked out. They're called No More Costly Walkouts, and they're made up of 18 liberal or environmental organizations. If you missed it, we, of course, as you can see, have that video up on our KGW YouTube page. But one thing we didn't mention is how much they're spending on these ads. Facebook shows the group has spent nearly $10,000 on ads on that platform. As for TV ads, well, this group is new, so actually it'll take some time to get that figure for you thanks to a 30-day delay in Oregon's campaign transaction reporting system. We'll let you know. So again, if you've got any questions about campaign finance or ad spending, hit us up on Facebook, Twitter, or you can send us an email. All right, so back to the primaries. Washington's is next week. Oregon's is in May. And the great thing for both states is we have mail-in voting. And that means no long lines at the polls, no messy caucuses. But it wasn't always that way.
Oregon has some of the highest voter turnout in the country, and our mail-in voting system is a big reason why. So how did we get here? Well, let's go back to 1981. That's when Oregon first tested mail-in voting in local elections. By the end of the decade, the popularity spread, and most counties were voting by mail. But some elections still made you go to the polls the old-fashioned way. Having two different voting systems was confusing to some people. So in 1998, Oregon overwhelmed overwhelmingly passed our mail-in voting measure that required vote by mail in every election. And we were the only state to do it until 2011, when Washington joined the party. Today, Colorado, Utah, California, and Hawaii use mail-in voting too. Now, Oregon regularly has some of the highest voter turnout in the country, partially due to mail-in, but also thanks to the fact that every time someone gets or renews their license in Oregon, they're automatically registered to vote. And that's how we got here.
Thank you, DMV. You don't hear that a lot. All right, so let's get hyper local now and talk about something that Portlanders frankly love to complain about, and that is the city's infamous arts tax. Yep. It's almost time to pay that $35 a year that a lot of people seem to ignore. So here's something that we think is worth your time. It's a Willamette Week story, basically about how everyone, even arts organizations, are annoyed by this tax. It also talks about how the funding is unreliable and how most of it actually goes to schools, not arts organizations. However you feel about this, you should check out this link mentioned at the top of the article because it is very funny. Last week, a guy says he drank a six-pack of beer and then decided to buy the URL artstax.org. He turned it into a satirical website complete with merchandise that it looks like you can actually buy, like a button saying, "My kid thought we voted for a farts tax," and a bib saying, "Still not as messy as the Portland arts tax."
It's the end of an awkward era in the Rose City. Portland's last porn theater is no more. Also, if you want to spend a nice day at the beach this weekend, maybe just stay out of the water. When the story continues.
Hey, welcome back, guys. So we see you right now weighing in on the Facebook and Twitter. Keep doing it. Keep using the hashtag #HeyDan or #HeyMaggie, or you can send us an email. We are reading your comments right now, and we'll go through them at the end of the show, assuming I can get to the end of that sentence. All right, the next story is something that we got an email about. Andre wrote in saying, seriously, brown waves have hit the Long Beach area of the southern Washington coast. Gross. A lot of brown goo, he wrote, is now floating around there. And that made us go, wait, what? So we had to send Keely Chalmers there to check it out. And it turns out it's a good thing.
It's not what you'd expect to see along the beaches, a thick, muddy, goopy mess. But this is what visitors to the Long Beach Peninsula this past weekend stepped right into.
It looks a lot like an oil spill.
Tiffany Booth took these photos and video of the event. Although it looked like an oil spill, she knew it was not. This, she knew, was a massive diatom bloom, one that was unusually thick.
It was a little bit different in the way of how concentrated it was.
We don't typically see them in those concentrations.
Ann Thompson is a research professor at Portland State University.
I specialize in what I call the invisible forest,
which is exactly what she says this bloom is. To the naked eye, it looks like mud, but put it under a microscope, and this is what you'll see. Tiny creatures called diatoms.
These are tiny, tiny cells. We can't normally see them with our naked eye, but they do the same work in the oceans that trees do on land. So they make oxygen and they take carbon from the atmosphere. These are the creatures that made the Earth habitable to humans.
One scoop of ocean water could contain millions of the creatures, but normally we can't see them. So why are they so thick off the Long Beach coast right now? Thompson says it's likely a combination of ocean temperature, an abundance of food, and lack of predators.
It's kind of the right recipe of all the conditions being proper for these cells to really explode in terms of their abundance.
And she encourages people to check them out. Just don't dive in.
The diatoms generally are very diverse, and some of them can be toxic, so that would be something to know more about before going swimming or surfing or something like that. But generally, I think it's a great opportunity to remind ourselves how much we depend on these amazing creatures, these microorganisms, for the oxygen in our atmosphere.
I've seen that brown goo up on the Washington coast. It was nasty. Nice to hear that it's actually healthy. Okay, I came across this today and I thought it was super interesting. To capitalize or not to capitalize. So what's your style? Moon with a capital M or moon lowercase? AP Style Guide, which is what many of us use in journalism and in broadcasting, and in fact the dictionaries use, says lowercase. NASA says uppercase. I gotta tell you, I side with NASA on this one, and here's why. Let's check it out. All right, so NASA says capitalize the names of planets, and we usually do. Venus, Mars, and so on and so forth. And that moon should be capitalized too when we're referring to Earth's moon, but not any other moon, like the moons of Jupiter. That would be lowercase because that's just a thing. I kind of agree with that. Also, the AP style guide is not consistent. They say capitalize Earth, but not our sun, not our moon. That doesn't make any sense to me. So, NASA says capitalize sun if it's our sun, but not some other sun out in the solar system, and Earth, unless you're just referring to dirt. Then it's just Earth. That's a thing, right? It's not the name of a thing. It's just a thing. And then I would just add this, and this is completely my thing, nobody else. And it's probably going to get torn apart by those of you who are English majors and grammar, people. I think we should capitalize the names of the seasons, not the word season, but we capitalize the name of the months. I think we should capitalize the names of the seasons. Of course, I'm a little bit partial, dealing in seasonality and all that. But anyway, the debate rages on. Uppercase moon, lowercase moon. Maggie?
Kinds of pots tonight. Matt, that's intense.
It is.
All right. Thank you so much. Hey guys, they call this the last great race, and soon one of its big sponsors will have thrown its support behind it for the last time. We're talking about the IDITAROD dog sled race. It's starting this weekend, and it's a grueling 1,000-mile trek through Alaska from Anchorage to Nome. But the state's namesake airline, Alaska, is pulling its sponsorship after 40 years. Now, during that time, its support helped provide veterinary care for the dogs, but the race has been a target of animal rights organizations like PETA for a while, who claim the dogs are being abused. Alaska says that pressure did not play a role, and instead it says it's reevaluating its sponsorships. This also comes during a time when the West Coast airline is looking to expand nationally. Even the CEO of the IDITAROD says sponsorships sometimes do just end.
You got a 40-year partnership. That's almost forever in our business.
All right, so PETA doesn't buy it, though. For its part, it's declaring victory and setting its sights on its next target. An article on its website applauds Alaska for the decision and claims that its protests paved the way for this move. The organization also shifts from planes to automobiles, urging Chrysler to join the list of companies pulling support for the IDITAROD. Oh, man, this story keeping Portland weird tonight. It's the end of an era, the final curtain call, if you will. The Oregon Theater, Portland's last remaining porn house, good evening, folks, has apparently shuttered on Southeast Division. Yes, it's not even the world's oldest profession is safe from gentrification, it turns out. Or maybe it's just another industry that millennials and the internet have killed. But the Willamette Week said yesterday the theater's door was locked, the phone was disconnected, and the Twitter account was deleted. What did they tweet about? I want to know. All right, so why that reporter knows or how they got tipped off about this, we're not going to ask those questions. But we do imagine some people are very confused and frustrated standing outside yesterday wondering what happened and thinking, where can they possibly find their entertainment now? And maybe that's because this place wasn't just about movies. Just listen to this colorful description of the live action in a previous Willamette Week article. All right, here we go. The theater is a thriving, self-contained world of sex, a hall of exhibitionists, swingers, and quite frankly, a lot more descriptors that I can't say on TV and expect to keep my job. Laugh all you want, but in a way, this theater is part of what made Portland it is today. I'm sweating. You sweating? I'm sweating. The Oregonian described the Rose City in the 70s as a smutty, drug and sex-craved haven. Wow. And called it the porn capital of the West Coast. And the Oregon Theater, which started showing adult cinema in the 70s, was in the thick of it all. And one Twitter user even wrote, "Only when the Oregon Theater on Division closes will old Portland truly die." Sad. That was in 2016. We applaud your clairvoyance, random person on Twitter, because yes, it looks like the one Portland legacy has come and gone, but it will not be forgotten. We hope the echoes of all the theater's glory haunt the residents of whatever apartment complex will probably be built here. Dun, dun, dun. All right, we're going to read some of your comments, hopefully not about that, and finish the story when we come back. Oh, gotta love the 360 cam. You never get used to that, really. All right, guys, I'm going to read one comment and one comment only here tonight because you all have been awesome on social media. But on my last night on the story, I have been getting texts from Dan Haggerty himself. Okay, the guy cannot take a vacation. He said that he's been watching the show on vacation with his family. He's loved the last few nights. Kudos to the story team, all of our amazing producers. And then he said, tell everyone thanks for kicking a word that I can't say on TV. So thank you so much. Dan will be back here tomorrow. And right now, Laurel is standing by with the news at 6:30.